Hi, so in this video we're going to be doing a follow along hamstring flexibility, mobility and strength routine. Ideally you're going to need a light dumbbell and a step, although you can still follow along with no kit. To warm up, we're going to do some glute bridges. Make sure your hips end up in line with your knees, so there's a nice straight line from your knees, hips to your shoulders. Once you feel a burn, we're going to do an isometric hold at the top for 10 seconds. Make sure you don't arch your lower back, so keep your hips neutral. Next, we're doing some active straight leg release. You can play around with flexing your foot or pointing your toes. Make sure you squeeze your quad to release your hamstrings. If you find it too hard to grab your leg, you can use a band so that your thigh is further away from you. Here I do as many reps as I need for each leg to feel roughly equal. Before moving on, I just sit up straight, bring my chest up and pull my toes towards myself, squeezing my quads and releasing. I'm just doing this a few times to get myself comfortable with stretching my calves and the back of my knees. Now we should be ready to do some hamstring PAILs and rails. Make sure you've got a tight grip on your thigh, and what you're going to do is hold your leg tight while you push your leg away from you for 10 seconds, and then you're going to pull your leg as close to your body as you can for another 10 seconds. You should feel your core and hip flexors slightly burning up. So we're going to do 10 seconds pushing away and 10 seconds pulling towards your body. And what I mean by pulling towards your body is, I mean using the strength of your leg, not the assistance of your hands. We're going to do 3 sets in total. Each time you pull your leg towards your body, you should notice that you've got a little bit extra range. So what you can do is pull your hands tighter and then push away. Next, we're doing one leg Romanian deadlift touches. This basically means we're not going to be lifting anything, but just aiming for an imaginary kettlebell that's standing on the floor just to touch low down. You want to make sure you're hinging nicely at the hips and keeping that lower back nice and straight. You'll notice when I'm in the deepest part of the stretch, my foot is in line with my hip and my hip is also in line with my shoulder, as if there was a pole attached from my shoulder, hip to foot. This is what's going to encourage good biomechanics when it comes to hinging and deadlifting, and it's also going to keep you nice and safe, making sure that you use your posterior chain, including the hamstrings, the glutes, and the core to deadlift rather than letting your back bend a little bit and then putting too much pressure through your spine. So far what we're trying to do is to engage the hamstrings and posterior chain to get some blood flow going. Then we've tried to lengthen them with the active straight leg release. And now we're simply trying to practice balance with this new length that we have. Now that we're quite warmed up, we're going to do a deep lunge hip mobility routine. You want your right knee in line with your foot and your hands on the inside of your foot. You want the left leg extended behind you with a minor stretch in your hip flexor. Your lower back should not be bent. In order to do this, make sure your back glute is squeezed to prevent any lower back arch. From here, imagine you're going to draw a backward C shape with your hip. You're going to move around forwards and backwards for several reps until you feel a bit looser. Then we're going to push our belly button towards the direction of our foot. Hold this here for a few seconds until you feel more comfortable with the stretch. Next, take your left hand out to the side and push your right knee away with your right hand. From here, you're going to be pushing your belly button and chest away from your leg. You should feel a stretch in your hip and the side of your body. Now we're going to hinge back with our hips and go into an anterior pelvic tilt. This basically means flex your foot and stick your bum out. We're going to rock forwards and backwards several times. When you come forwards, remember to push the knee out and squeeze the back glute. When you've loosened off, we're going to do a 10-second contraction of the hamstring by pushing the heel down into the ground. Moving on to the other side, we're again going to get your foot in line with your hand, and then drawing a C shape with your hip on this side, rocking backwards and forwards to get comfortable. Try to ignore the munching dog, I can't seem to get him to stop eating pears. Once you loosen off, imagine you're pushing your belly button to your heel, and hold this here for about 5 to 10 seconds until this loosens off. Next, you're going to push your knee away from you and push your belly button away from your leg. Again, hold this for 5 to 10 seconds while you get used to it. Again, we're going to be hinging back with an anterior pelvic tilt and flexing the foot. We're going to rock back and forward several times until your hamstring loosens off. Again, we're going to do a 10-second isometric hold, pushing that heel down to the ground. Now we're ready to do some weighted one-leg dumbbell Romanian deadlifts. Same execution as before, really try to focus on keeping your foot, hip and shoulder in line so your lower back doesn't end up bending. What I try to encourage people to do is imagine that someone's pulling their hips backwards, or if you struggle with this, try to put a band around your hips and up and behind you so that the band is pulling you upwards but also backwards. This way the hip should end up hinging backwards rather than your body simply folding forwards and the hip staying in the same place. That wouldn't help you with using your hamstring to the full range. When you're at the very bottom here, at this point, you should feel that your glute and hamstring are completely stretched, and that's what's activating to push you back up again. You should also feel a lot of core and lower back activation. Now we're going to be doing a split stance Romanian deadlift. To get in position, take a small step about a foot in length. Raise the back heel and bend the knee. Keep a tiny bend in the front leg and aim to get both knees roughly in line with each other. You can choose to hold a light dumbbell or kettlebell, or you can place a very light bar on your back. Try to start as light as possible to begin with. While completely controlling what you can with your core, really bracing, you're going to hinge back, keeping the back nice and straight. And predominantly using the front leg, you're going to contract the hamstring and glute to get back up. Just imagine that that back leg is there, mainly for balance. You can start off with anything from 6 to 10 reps to begin with. If you've never done this before, then 2 to 3 sets of this is plenty. If you've done this movement before quite a few times, you might want to go a bit heavier and choose something like 5 sets. Last but not least, we're going to do a Jefferson curl. If you've never done this before or you're uncomfortable with the movement, I would suggest starting with your back on the wall so that you can feel each of your vertebrae going down one by one as it loses touch with the wall. A weight is also optional. As you get better at this movement, you will slowly begin to increase the weights in which you use. What we're aiming to do here is, starting with tucking the chin down, we're going to go vertebrae by vertebrae all the way down until you are folded forwards. Try to keep your feet relatively close to each other so that you can squeeze your adductors together. Let your arms and scapula pull you down. Then when you're ready to come back up, do the same in reverse. We're going to do a few reps like this. If you like this video, please subscribe. We're going to be doing more follow-along tutorials, and let us know in the comments below what you struggle with the most so we can make a video for that.